For all of 2018, Samsung has been sitting in the sidelines, silently observing while brands like Xiaomi, Realme, Asus, and Honor have been running the show in the lower mid-range segment. Cut to 2019, and it looks like Samsung has a solid plan in place, one that has already worried its competitors. Don't believe me? Take a look at this upside down tweet. So by now, you all probably know that I'm talking about the newly launched Galaxy M10 and Galaxy M20, the phone that is made for the millennials. I've been using the Samsung Galaxy M20 as my primary device for some time now. And is this what the millennial really wants? Hi, I'm Ershad from Mr. Phone, and that's what I'm going to find out in this review of the newly launched Samsung Galaxy M20. Hey guys, but before we move on, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon right next to it to get notified whenever Mr. Phone puts out an awesome new tech video. That the Samsung Galaxy M20 looks very plain from the rear is an indisputable fact. A tough, curved polycarbonate shell wraps around the internals of the phone. Coming back to the rear, no pun intended, this polycarbonate shell is a smudge magnet, especially if you have oily fingers like I do. The phone cannot keep body oil at bay. The fingerprint scanner sits on the rear and is at an easy to reach position. What's unique about this scanner is that it is slightly raised so you can get a feel for it easily without looking at the back. The scanner is reliable and fairly accurate, but not the fastest one out there. That said, it is extremely fast to register your fingerprint by simply swiping down a few times. There's also a face unlock option, but it doesn't work in the dark, nor is it very secure. In fact, it unlocked my face with my eyes closed, even when I had switched off faster recognition. While the phone is on the chunkier side thanks to the large 5000 mAh battery, I really liked the weight distribution and the overall handiness. In fact, thanks to the slim bezels and the 19.5:9 aspect ratio of the display, the phone is not very wide. A couple of colleagues in my office actually thought that the Galaxy M20 was a very compact phone, and I kinda agree with that sentiment. To add to that, I inadvertently dropped the phone a couple of times and not so much as a scratch was registered on the back or the front. I think that the M20 is one very sturdily built smartphone. The power button and the volume rocker are on the right edge, and they offer a great tactile feedback when pressed. There's also a mic on the top. The SIM card tray on the left has individual slots for 2 SIM cards and a single micro SD card. None of that hybrid slot BS. At the bottom, Samsung gives users a USB Type-C port. This is a completely unheard of feature in this price range, at least until now. Flanking the Type-C port on the sides is the mono speaker and the 3.5mm jack. As far as ports go, Samsung has really left no stone unturned. But the one conspicuously missing feature is the notification LED. I know some folks who might rue the absence of one. Overall though, the Samsung Galaxy M20's design is extremely functional. It's not a very eye-catchy design, but I have no complaints as such. The Samsung Galaxy M20 has a 6.3-inch TFT LCD panel on the front. This panel has a display resolution of 2340 by 1080 pixels, which is basically FHD+. There is a strong perception among the tech community that TFT panels are inferior compared to IPS LCDs. You could not be more wrong. They're not necessarily inferior, but both the panels have their own advantages and disadvantages. Now, with the TFT panel, you get this very high contrast ratio that looks really good because it presents a very deep black level. It is almost as good as an AMOLED, not exactly like an AMOLED, but it is pretty close. And that is probably the reason why Samsung has gone for a TFT panel instead of an IPS LCD panel. The colors are not as punchy as an AMOLED panel, but it is fairly accurate. The overall color temperature, even in the whites, are pretty neutral. The panel is also plenty crisp, and at maximum brightness, it is definitely easily legible under direct sunlight. It is also brighter than most phones in this price range. There are a few issues with the display though. Firstly, the oleophobic coating, if it exists, just like the rear, is not very effective at keeping body oils at bay on the front. I was wiping the screen after every 5 minutes of usage, thanks to all the smudges. Secondly, when you tilt the display at a slight angle, you will see the color temperature shift to a warm yellow. This is a characteristic of TFT panels and there's not much Samsung can do to fix that. And finally, the palm rejection is not very effective and it is doubly annoying because of the slim bezels. I would constantly swipe down the notification panel or trigger the home screen customization mode because of this problem. All said and done, the two big reasons why the Samsung's display is great are the tiny chin and the dewdrop notch. And if you know Samsung very well, it will definitely not introduce any new feature without actually branding it. So Samsung has called this dewdrop notch the Infinity V display. This is the first time we're actually seeing a dewdrop notch on a Samsung smartphone. Actually, this is the first time we're seeing a notch on a Samsung smartphone. And I'm glad that Samsung waited this long to include a notch, primarily because the dewdrop notch is probably the better looking of all the notches that are out there. In fact, in this price range, apart from the Realme 2 Pro and the Realme U1, it's only the Samsung Galaxy M20 that sort of gives you this kind of screen estate, and that's definitely an advantage for the M20. Obviously, what is the point of such a good display if it doesn't come with wideband L1 support? I definitely want to watch Netflix and Prime in full HD. The videos that I played on the Galaxy M20's display look crisp, bright and detailed. Not many phones in this price range can offer this level of fidelity. During my testing, I could play videos on YouTube and Prime Video in full HD. On Netflix, that wasn't the case, but it is just a matter of Netflix updating the software. I wouldn't worry too much about this. Another reason why the multimedia performance on the M20 is great is because the phone supports Dolby Atmos sound for smartphones. While the setting doesn't really work for music playback, basically left and right channel stereo, I can tell you this: if you're watching movies, the Atmos setting can definitely come in handy in heightening the viewing experience. The phone also supports up to aptX Bluetooth streaming codec. I found the music listening experience using the 3.5mm jack and the wireless headphones to be extremely pleasing. Now coming to the mono speaker at the bottom, it is not very loud, but it is crisp and sounds very full. In fact, the shimmer of the high-end frequencies is particularly heartening to hear from the mono speaker. I experienced this when playing Tiles Hop on the phone. The Samsung Galaxy M20, as you can see right now, comes with Android version 8.1 Oreo. You know, in 2019, that is definitely a bit of a letdown because I want all the smartphones that launch in 2019 to come with at least Android Pie. Having said that, Samsung wants you to forget that with this new coat of Experience UI that it has added to the M20. This version is running Experience UI 9.5 and it is a really refined version of Experience UI that I've used till date. And that sort of makes me forget about the Android Pie update. But thankfully, Samsung has promised that it will definitely bring Android Pie to the Samsung Galaxy M20. Let me break down my experience into easy to understand points. Number one, the thing about Experience UI is that it now asks you if you want to install third-party apps or not. You can choose to opt out, so that's definitely an advantage. Secondly, on this new Experience UI 9.5, Samsung has added lock screen stories. This is on by default and you have to go into settings to switch it off. Like the name suggests, lock screen stories essentially showcases a bunch of articles based on your topic preferences. I didn't see any ads as such on the screen, so that's good. Interestingly though, the Poco F1 also uses Glance, which is the content partner for lock screen stories. The more you know. Thirdly, notifications show up on the display in a small pill under the clock. You can hit the pill to pull down the notification shade halfway to see what it contains. Looks neat, I guess. The fourth point that I want to highlight is that Experience UI 9.5 is extremely malleable. You can change the icon pack, the icon size, the size of the grid, and a whole lot more. Heck, it even offers you a system-wide dark mode in one of the themes in the theme store. It is pretty cool. Samsung has also added gestures for good measure. This is a feature ported from One UI based on Android Pie, and I'm glad that it exists. But the problem with EMUI is that the notch is poorly optimized. The network settings and the clock on the top bar are pulled down below the notch when you pull down the notifications panel. It could have just stayed at the top. There's also dual apps for those who want that. I don't really need it though. And finally, I really like the cute animation that flows around the dewdrop notch when it tries to recognize your face or if you switch to the selfie camera. It is a pretty creative way to highlight the notch. Overall, if you're a fan of Samsung's operating system, you will like the tweaks on offer here. Even if you're not a fan of the operating system, you will appreciate that this is a premium software at this price. If it is better than MIUI or stock Android is definitely a subjective opinion, but there is no denying the fact that this kind of premium refined experience is not found in this price range. You know what? Shri has done a slightly more detailed review of Experience UI 9.5 in his review of the Galaxy M10. You should go and take a look at that in his review. The Galaxy M20 has a dual camera setup on the rear with a 13 megapixel primary camera with an f/1.9 aperture lens and a secondary 5 megapixel f/2.2 camera. Before I discuss about the quality of the pictures, let's take a look at the camera app. Interestingly, Samsung offers a feature-rich experience similar to its flagships. For example, you get a live focus mode, panorama mode, a few stickers and the likes. Small features like swipe up to switch on the selfie mode comes in really handy. All things considered, the camera app is easy to get accustomed to and use. It is one of the most feature-rich and easy to use camera apps in this price range, no doubt. As for the picture quality, the M20 captures a great amount of details when you shoot wide landscape shots. The color temperature is pretty accurate, and in our camera comparison, Shri discovered that the M20 had a far better wide shot compared to the Redmi Note 6 Pro and the Realme 2 Pro. Moreover, you also have a dedicated wide-angle lens that can take a wider field of view. Samsung has tried its best to keep the color processing similar to the primary camera, but I did find some inconsistencies once in a while. Take a look at this specific example for your own understanding. What I like about Samsung's use of a wide-angle lens is that in the default Gallery app, it gives you the option to do shape correction. This helps reduce the barrel distortion by a lot. The software does a frigging great job, honestly. In close-up shots of colorful flowers, the M20 tends to boost colors, but the details are still present. What I particularly like about the M20's camera is the great live focus mode. The level of depth, the blur, the edge detection are all very well done. You really don't get such natural bokeh from other phones in this price range. The dynamic range by default is not very impressive, but the HDR mode can fix that for you easily. In low light, the M20 does a great job with the exposure and lets in a decent amount of light for the picture to look good. But the software does some aggressive noise correction in indoor shots and lets the noise be in darker portions in the night shots. I still like the pictures, but the M20 might not be the best low light camera in this price range. Coming to the selfies, from the 8MP camera, they are alright at best. I think other phones like the Realme U1, the Honor 10 Lite and the Mi A2 offer far more detailed selfie. As far as video recording goes, the M20 lacks image stabilization, but the picture quality and the colors are pretty good. Anyway, you should head over to Shri's camera comparison of the M20 with the Redmi Note 6 Pro and the Realme 2 Pro if you want to know where the M20 stands in today's day and age. And in any case, I think that a Gcam mod for the M20 should come soon. I mean, what do you guys think? I would really love that. Overall though, I think that Samsung Galaxy M20 takes great pictures in its current state, but it is just probably a couple of software updates away from being a really competent camera in this price range. For starters, I would love for Samsung to include electronic image stabilization in 1080p video capture. Interestingly, there are so many firsts in this Samsung Galaxy M20 that it's easy for us to forget it. For example, this is the first phone to come with Samsung's brand new mid-range chip, that is the Exynos 7904. This system on chip is based on a 14nm fabrication process. The 8 cores on the Exynos 7904 includes 2 Cortex A73 chips clocked at 1.73 GHz each and 6 Cortex A53 chips clocked at 1.53 GHz each. The chipset has a Mali G71 GPU for graphics as well. If you want to see a spec-to-spec comparison between Exynos 7904, Snapdragon 660, Snapdragon 710 and the Helio P70, Varun has created an article for you. The link is in the description below, do check it out. Our review unit of the M20 had 4GB of RAM and 64GB of internal storage. And if you want more storage, the card slot accepts SD cards of up to 512GB capacity. There is a lower variant that comes with 3GB of RAM and 32GB of internal storage, just in case you don't want to fork more cache. By the way, the internal storage is one of the fastest eMMC 5.1 drives I've tested yet. In our AndroBench read-write speed test, the M20 returns scores of 306.2 megabits per second and 144.44 megabits per second respectively. That's pretty good, honestly. So I also ran a regular suite of benchmarks on the phone. The phone scored around 107,000 in Antutu, which is around the Snapdragon 636 scores. And in Geekbench test, it scored around 1,300 in the single core test and 4,000 in the multi-core test. Again, very close to what the Snapdragon 636 achieves. And finally, in our 3D Mark Slingshot benchmark run, the phone scored 580 points in OpenGL ES 3.1 test and 1101 in the Vulkan run. The OpenGL score is lower than the Snapdragon 636, but the Vulkan score is higher than the Snapdragon 636. I also played a little bit of PUBG and it ran smoothly only in balanced with medium FPS setting. If you're a heavy gamer, a phone with Snapdragon 660 or Kirin 710 might be better suited for you. But for casual gamers, the M20 will be great. In daily usage, I found the phone to be extremely responsive. The animations on Experience UI 9.5 are slightly heavy-handed, and that could make the phone seem slow. But I didn't face a single lag or, a hang-up at all. In fact, I opened PUBG and a plethora of other apps, and the phone didn't force close the other apps like Twitter, WhatsApp, Facebook, and more. While it did restart PUBG, that's fine. I think Samsung does a fine and dandy job of the RAM management. As for the call quality, the M20 has an incredibly clear sound from the earpiece. I had to actually reduce the volume a couple of levels during calls. It latches onto network even in areas of congestion. My only concern with the Samsung Galaxy M20 is that it doesn't support 802.11 AC standard, which means that it won't support 5 GHz Wi-Fi networks at your house or at the office. Also, another Samsung first inside the Samsung Galaxy M20 is the 5000 mAh battery. This is the largest we've seen on a Samsung smartphone till date, and as expected, the battery performance is excellent. I consistently got 6+ hours of screen on time on extremely heavy usage, where I was subjecting the phone to benchmark tests, gaming, and the likes. That's not it though. The Type-C port exists so it can support fast charging for the battery. Samsung claims that the M20 supports 15-watt fast charging, but you get a 10-watt charger in the box. Using this charger, I managed to charge the battery from 0 to 100 in 2 hours and 28 minutes. This is with screen on. With the screen turned off, I got the phone to charge from 0 to 100 in around 2 hours and 10 minutes. This is great fast charging speeds for a 5000 mAh battery. In comparison, and Shri will tell you in his review of the Samsung Galaxy M10, that phone takes 3 hours, or actually more than 3 hours, to charge from 0 to 100% for a 3400 mAh battery. And you know what? I actually also tested out the Samsung Galaxy M20's battery charging using a 15-watt charger that you get inside the Samsung Galaxy Note 9's box. But unfortunately, for some odd reason, the M20 only charged at 10-watt speeds and not at the full 15-watt capacity. To sum it up though, the battery performance is one of the reasons why a lot of people are going to gravitate towards the Samsung Galaxy M20 and feel like buying it. So that is my full review of the phone, and I'm confident enough to say this, that the Galaxy M20 can actually convince a large chunk of the millennial online buying population to look at this phone as an option. In fact, it could also be an option for that chunk of the millennials who buy phones for the elders in the family, just because of the sheer brand value that Samsung gets into the picture. And that sheer brand value is enough to sell more phones than any review can. In fact, I spoke to somebody who is not a tech enthusiast, somebody who just buys phones so that they can use them, and I showed them the Samsung Galaxy M20 and I asked them for the price and I told them about the expected price of the phone, and the first thing that they had to say was, "Bhai, कौन Xiaomi लेगा अभी? I mean, Samsung इतना अच्छा phone बना चुका है." Which means that who would buy a Xiaomi phone? Samsung's made a good phone, and that in itself tells you what Samsung has managed to achieve with the Galaxy M20. The phone has a great battery life, it has a crisp display, the performance is not too bad, and the camera is 2 updates away from being really good. Yes, there could be issues with the Samsung Galaxy M20, but those are not necessarily deal breakers. And as is usual in our Mr. Phone review, let us start comparing the Galaxy M20 with its immediate competitors and find out where it stacks up. Starting off with Xiaomi's phones, while I know that the Redmi Note 7 is just around the corner, Xiaomi's current proposition is the Redmi Note 6 Pro. The M20 has a bigger battery and the display is slightly better too when compared to the Redmi Note 6 Pro. Performance wise, the Note 6 Pro might be slightly more powerful, and the M20 might not be as good as the Note 6 Pro when it comes to camera performance. It is evident that Samsung is taking on Xiaomi more than any other brand by making the M20 an online only phone. And this is the battle I'm going to watch closely to see how it plays out as we reach further into 2019. There's also the Mi A2, which has dropped in price drastically. With its Snapdragon 660 system on chip and the stunning cameras, the Mi A2 definitely makes for an interesting purchase. But the poor battery life and the thick bezels around the display are a bit of a letdown in 2019. The M20's great battery life and the modern front fascia will probably attract a lot of users. ASUS has been a silent player in the background, but it has managed to make a superb impact with the audiences with the Zenfone Max Pro M2. Compared to the Samsung, the Max Pro M2 might not feel as refined, especially the camera app, which gets my goat every single time I use it. Else, the Max Pro M2 stock Android is what sways a lot of buyers. The M20 and the Zenfone Max Pro M2 are the two phones in this price category that come with a 5000 mAh battery. The Max Pro M2 is truly a pro category phone that a lot of enthusiasts will buy because of that 5000 mAh battery and Snapdragon 660 alone. But I think a lot of the more matured audiences, like my mom, would prefer something like the M20 because of Samsung's sheer brand value. Realme's rise to glory happened in such a flash last year, and all that accolade is well deserved. The Realme 2 Pro and the U1 are great phones, no doubt, but the M20 definitely has better software, display and battery life. Once again, the brand name could also sway buyers to the M20, but considering how Realme has been belligerent, I'm sure the brand will fight back with something interesting. Honor has been doing some interesting stuff too. The 8X and 10 Lite are decent phones, but Samsung offers a more color accurate panel and more battery life. Compared to the 10 Lite, the M20 has a smoother performance too. Honestly, the M20 feels like a better buy than the 10 Lite. The 8X's big screen could sway a few buyers, but the M20 still stands a chance. All in all, I think that Samsung has done a great job with the M20. It is a renewed Samsung that's out of the vigor to take back a big chunk of the online market that it lost to other brands, majorly Xiaomi. Do let me know in the comment section below what you thought about the newly launched Samsung Galaxy M20. Until next time, this is Ershad from Mr. Phone signing off. Cheerios.